Hey guys, if you're looking to build a 1,000 horsepower LS engine, this is the block you're going to need. This is the Dart SHP Pro cast iron block. This block is twice as strong as the factory block. So when you take a look at the factory aluminum blocks that come in the Corvettes and Camaros, or even the cast iron truck block, this block we'd like to say is twice as strong. In some cases, you'll find guys using this block to do 2,000 horsepower. Here, we typically use it in that 1,000, 1,200 horsepower build. And some of the reasons that this block is so much stronger is the cylinders are way thicker. The cast iron is much, much denser, so those cylinders can handle that extra boost. One of the other things is the fact that it comes with a billet steel main cap. They're splayed in the 3 center positions, and they offer a ARP main stud with that block. One of the big updates to the oiling system is that it's a priority main oiling system. So that fixes a lot of the oiling issues that you could come into when making this type of power. They also provide a nice coated cam bearing. This cam bearing is made by Durabond and it's all coated, so that's a huge, huge plus there. But the biggest thing that we like about this block is the fact that it has a 6-bolt clamping force. Now, a factory LS1 head, all the factory blocks come with only the 4 bolts. So here's a 6-bolt head here, aftermarket. This is our Golan engine LS3 CNC ported head that we CNC port here in house, and this is a 4-bolt version of that head. So all the factory heads, are just 4-bolt, whereas our aftermarket heads, they offer them as a 6-bolt option. So that will give you the extra clamping force that you need. These blocks have this extra hole on the north and south side of the cylinder to get you that extra clamping force. You're going to need that if you're going to make 1,000 or 1,200 horsepower. There is absolutely no doubt. So you don't want to blow a head gasket. You're going to need an aftermarket head like this, along with a block that has these features. After that, we are doing all the machine work in-house. So we'll put this into our Rottler 4-axis CNC. We'll bore this block to the correct size. We'll deck it. We're going to zero deck the block. That'll correct any compression ratio issues. And then we'll put it in our sun and hone, and we will hone the cylinders to get the correct finish to match up with the ring. Now, most commonly we're using a Wiseco Boost Ready piston, and they offer their GFX ring. So we'll finish the cylinders to match with that ring. We use a profilometer. That's a tool to measure the cylinder hone and to ensure that it has the proper finish for the ring that we're using. So that profilometer is from Total Seal. We work with them on getting the proper finishes for that ring, and that'll allow you to seal up the cylinder and make 1,000 horsepower without having a bunch of blow-by. One of the other great things that I like about this block is the fact that, especially you guys with short blocks, if you're doing a short block at home, this block will use all your stock covers. So if you have a stock Camaro LS3 block, you could take your rear seal cover, timing cover, oil pan, windage tray, valley cover, all those covers will bolt right back onto this block. So that becomes really convenient versus trying to buy all new covers, which could be upwards of $500 or $600 extra in your build. That pretty much wraps up the block. We're going to talk about the rotating assembly that we're using in this, type of parts that we're going to use so you don't have parts flying out your oil pan when you're making 1,000 plus horsepower. All right, so this is the rotating assembly that we're using when we're making 1,000 horsepower with these LS builds. Our go-to every single time is Calais for the crankshaft. Crank and rods, Calais, home run, you just can't go wrong. This is their Compstar series crankshaft. A few years ago, they updated this crank to have 8 counterweights, so these 2 center counterweights were added to help with any flex in the crank when you're making, let's say, 1,000 horsepower in this case. So that was huge. These guys, the machine work is on the money. I mean, if you're actually a machinist and you measure this stuff, it is right on. So it makes our job a lot easier when building an engine and setting bearing clearances and whatnot. We'll actually install, a reluctor wheel. So, some guys are going to have a 24X, other guys will have a 58. This is a 58 wheel. When we do these, we'll actually TIG weld the wheel on so it doesn't, come off, or it doesn't try to spin off, if you will. That happens sometimes under big boost. If you don't have it welded, there's a case that it can slip a little bit. From there, we use their Compstar connector rod. We use the Compstar Extreme version of the rod, actually. That's a much stronger rod. It is a rod that can handle, I think they slate it as like 1,500 horsepower. We keep it in that 1,000, 1,200 horsepower range, and that has just been money every time. No problems with that connecting rod. From there, we're using King for the bearings. Their XP series bearing, which is this bearing here, never really gives us any issue. They actually have a third groove on the thrust bearing that gives you a little extra oiling there, so we don't seem to have any thrust issues like we've had with some other bearings in the past. So we like that bearing kit a lot. Same thing on the rods. We're using the King XP rod bearing as well, so no issues there. After that, Wiseco. This is the piston that we use. We've used for years. This typically is a dish. You guys that are pump fuel, we're building this piston, this engine to be about 9.5 to 1. 85 guys, 10.5, sometimes 11 to 1, depending upon the situation. One of the nice things that when we order this piston, we upgrade the wrist pin. So that's something that we feel is a huge upgrade. So this is the standard pin you'd get with one of their pistons, and this is the upgraded S718 tool steel wrist pin. This is a must-have. If you're going to build a 1,000 horse motor, you want to make sure you've got this strong wrist pin in there so you don't beat up the small end of the rod and the piston itself. So that's huge. This piston comes with their GFX ring that I mentioned earlier in the block. That ring is something that works great, even at 20-25 pounds of boost. We've had no issues with it. When we're done with measuring all these parts and whatnot, we actually will spin balance this and balance this crankshaft in-house. We'll show you a little clip of that. And so we'll actually measure piston, pin, rings, clips, bearings, rods, and we'll build a bob weight up, and we'll spin this crank up and get it right in. Now Calais will rough balance it, and they'll add some heavy metal here. You can see a piece here in the front, but when we get them, they're still probably in some cases 30-40 grams out. We'll actually spin balance them and get them right in, right in tight, so it's just a beautiful, smooth balance job. And that just ensures that you're not going to have any issues, any premature bearing wear, any vibrations that are unwanted. So that is something that's you must do. I mean, that's just every engine builder will do a really, really nice balance job in the crank. And for the most part, that is a lineup that we rely on day in and day out here to ensure that parts aren't going to come again flying out your oil pan when you're trying to make 1,000 or 1,200 horsepower. So here we are with the Dart SHP Pro block. We're going to talk about oiling. So the oiling system on this block is awesome. It uses a priority main oiling system, and when we do all our machine work here, we're actually blueprinting the clearances in to match usually right in that 2.5 to 3 thousandths of oil clearance on both the main and the rods. So we'll actually take our mainline honing system and we'll hone the main line and build that clearance in. So where we'll measure the outside diameter of the crank, and we'll actually clip bearings into the block, torque it up, measure the inside diameter, do the math between that inside diameter and the outside diameter of the crank to sneak up on it. So slowly sneak up on it and build that oil clearance on both the mains and rods into that 2.5 to 3 thousandths area. So once we have that clearance set, we're on a lot of the street applications, we're going with the Melling Select Performance 10296, which is the high volume, high pressure pump. That pump comes with 2 different springs extra. So it comes with a high pressure spring installed, which with a 530 weight oil, you'll probably expect somewhere in that 40 pounds of hot idle oil pressure. On the gas, you're probably going to be somewhere in that 70 to 80 pounds. If you had an application that you wanted to lower it, they supply 2 extra springs. This blue one's a low pressure spring. They also offer the Copo Camaro high pressure. So if you're like a drag race guy and you want all the pressure, and let's say we loosen the clearances even more than 3 thousandths in a drag race application, a lot of times we'll use that spring. If you were a road course guy, doing road course, we would run the 10295 pump. That is the standard volume, high pressure pump. That pump would be a better application, not trying to pump all that oil up to the top, on long straightaways, doing 120, 140 miles an hour. So that pump, you could typically see 30, 35 at idle and, somewhere in that 60 to 70, when you're, at RPM. The road course applications, we would typically run like a 2050, weight oil, something like a Redline synthetic or some of the Driven brand synthetics. They're all good oils. That thicker 2050 oil will, help combat some of the heat. Street applications, though, you could run just about any oil and not, have a problem. Street applications, a 530 synthetic, name brand oil would suffice for that. That's, pretty much wraps it up. There's not a lot involved in, the oiling system. There's just a few main points that you need to have the appropriate pump for your application, and you'll know that this block's got you covered, with that, that advanced oiling, system. This is the valvetrain that we use when we're building these 1,000+ horsepower LSs. Our relationship with BTR has been awesome over the last 2 years. We've relied on their cams. They've got a whole bunch of positive displacement cams, turbo cams. You guys probably already know that because BTR is pretty popular. All the LS cams are billet steel. So that's the first good thing about the LS camshaft is it's a billet steel piece, so it's super strong. We will set the camshaft to match what you're doing. So if you're doing, let's say, a Whipple 3.0, we're going to use one of their positive displacement cams and then match that to the level of power you want. So if you're like an 800 horse guy, we might use their PD2 cam. If you're going to be 1,000, maybe it's the PD3. Same thing with turbo. They've got different stages of turbo cams, I think all the way up to stage 4 or 5. So it just depends upon how radical you're looking to make the engine. After that, we are going with the Chloe's timing set. Single roll timing sets, we have them for both 4X and 2X, so it'll be matching. The 4X matches the 58 reluctor wheel. The 1X, I should say, it matches the 24X reluctor wheel, so we'll match that. These timing sets are a billet steel top gear, and they have a little hex adjust piece. That allows us to degree the cam in. So when you get these camshafts, there'll be some recommendations on the cam card as to where to install the cam. You can literally change the characteristics, of the engine by advancing or retarding the camshaft. That's a really nice benefit of this gear. The timing sets you want to look at, if you look at the part number on the box here, they're going to be an end in an A for adjustable, and then the Z means that it is the Z chain, which is also noted as the C5R timing chain. So this chain is, if you try to buy this chain individually, it's like $150 or $170 just for the chain. So this is the stronger chain. We've had a lot of luck with this chain. I can't say that I've actually seen it break some normal instances. So that is our go-to timing set. These LSs, you want to run this, what we call a little timing chain buffer. If the chain gets dynamic, this dampens that dynamic action of the chain and helps it not to snap. So if you don't have this in there, that dynamic action of the chain could essentially lead to it breaking. So that's a must go to piece. It's $25, so it's pretty cheap. You won't find one of our engines without that in it. Lastly, the Johnson lifter. This lifter here, when we're building a 1,000 horse motor with these aftermarket blocks, we like to go with this tie bar lifter. This is the Johnson short travel and be part number 2116 LSR. This is really, a game changer as far as lifters. Lifters can be a pain. There can be a lot of failure points with OE lifters when making this type of power. So this lifter is the go-to piece. She's not cheap. It's about $790 or $800 for a set of these, but I wouldn't build this level of engine without this lifter. And yeah, really, so wrapping it all up, cam lifters, timing set, that's the stuff we use. That's the stuff we don't have problems with. If you guys are building your engines at home, take some notes, using this timing set, that lifter. I know it's more expensive components, but that's what you're going to need in order to make sure these things don't have issues in the valvetrain department. So when we're doing the top end for a 1,000 horsepower LS boosted engine, this is the head we go with. This is our private label Golden engine LS3 cylinder head that we 5-axis CNC port in-house. So it comes with a fully CNC ported runners. Any spots in the runners that do not get touched, we will hand blend. The combustion chambers are fully CNC ported as well. Has a bronze valve guide. We'll do a 3-angle high flow valve job in the machine shop here. This head flows amazing. So this head flows, a ton of CFM. Works good in both natural aspirated and boosted areas. One of the nice features of this head, like I mentioned earlier in the video, is these bosses for the 6-bolt clamping force. So all you 1,000 horsepower plus boosted guys want to make sure that we're using an ARP head stud that will utilize these extra holes and give you that clamping force you need. One thing you have to remember with the Dart block is that the head bolt holes are all SAE thread. So it will take a specific ARP part number. You're not going to be able to use let's say a factory LS head stud kit, on this block. So you'll need this number here. That's the 6-bolt, part number for that. When it comes to components in the heads, we're using Rev for the valves. So Rev will have them on these boosted applications make an Inconel exhaust valve that has a 1.6 head diameter. And then on the intake, we'll have them do what we call a severe duty intake. So it's the highest grade stainless that they offer for an intake valve. That uses a 2165 head. This valve actually ends up being about 300 thousandths longer than, let's say, a stock LS valve. That gets, all the geometry correct for the rockers and whatnot in this head. We take a raw piece of billet and we build our CNC machine cuts out this rocker pedestal in-house. We put our little logo in there. So we build this part right in-house, and we have different thicknesses. Whether you're doing roller rockers would be a little thicker. The factory GM rocker arm would be this thickness here, slightly thinner. That gets all the geometry correct. With that spring, BTR, we do the BTR premium spring. They offer a spring that has a lash cap. So that lash cap gives us a little extra protection, on the tip of the valve. You drift guys are always off the rev limiter, so our drift customers will find a lot of times they live on the rev limiter. It'll beat up the tip of the rocker arm and the tip of the valve stem. So with this lash cap in play, if you have that issue and you have a rocker arm that gets worn, you can simply change the lash cap, change the rocker arm, you're back up and running again versus taking the engine apart and changing the valve. So that's a huge bonus, and that's a must-have, in this level of engine. Rocker arm wise, we do offer a few different roller rockers for it. In the case of this is a factory rocker arm. We use the BTR Premium trunnion upgrade. This has been money. This has just worked in every engine that we've done. So that's a home run there. We'll press this stock trunnion out in our press and press in the BTR Premium trunnion. They do have a few different levels of trunnion. This is their TK002 trunnion, so the premium piece. Push rods, BTR, 5/16 push rod. This cylinder head will run a much longer push rod than, let's say, a factory LS. Factory LS stuff is usually like 7/400. This is going to be more around an 8-inch push rod, give or take, what you're using for cam. From there, we do offer this head in a 4-bolt, so you guys balling on a budget that are doing maybe a 6-liter truck block, doing some boost with that, maybe a little less power than, so let's say, the 1,000 horse deal. We do have a head that does not have the extra bosses and is just a 4-bolt head that'll bolt on and look, proper for you. So we offer that with all the same features. We can, pretty much customize all that to match whatever you have. But that's it. This is the cylinder head that flows enough air and will make it happen. And these are the components that we rely on to make this power and not have a problem. All right, so let's talk chargers. You supercharger guys, if you're looking to make this 1,000+ horsepower with ease, there's 2 chargers that will do that are positive displacement units. The Whipple 3.0, that would be the first one. We love that charger. That is an easy, I've made 1,300 horsepower with that in some race applications. So to make 1,000 horse with that is very, very easy to do. Same thing with the Magnuson 2650R. That's another one that's really easy. We do like the jack shaft function of that in the back, where you actually have adjustability with the top pulley that's out front, but you also have 2 cogs in the back that you can play around with some gearing to adjust the speed of the charger and effectively adjusting the horsepower of the engine. With those, our go-to every single time is the Wegner drive kits. Wegner Automotive makes a beautiful front drive, and they have a dedicated belt for the supercharger. So that is like the most important thing to ensure that you're going to make the power and not have belt slippage and putting dust all over underneath your hood. That dedicated drive is going to be what you need. So they put the 6-rib accessories out in front of that, which, so if you're doing alternator power steering, air conditioning, you'll have a 6-rib out in front, and then that dedicated drive will be an 8-rib that'll go around the lower crank pulley, around the water pump, and then obviously the top supercharger pulley. So that kind of gets you wrapped up there. Those chargers both will need a cooler. So you'll actually have a radiator with a circulation pump to keep that cool and keep your manifold air temps in a range where you're not going to detonate or have your tune be pulley timing. So those two chargers are great. I mean, they'll get the job done every time. It's really what we prefer. We like to be able to do that here, and we can dyno those in-house. So that's the nice part of those two chargers. We'll put all that together, assemble everything, get you a nice dyno video, be able to show you how much power it makes, and everything will come to you assembled, belts and all, so you're just ready to take it out, dress the rest of your accessories on, and dump it in the car. All right, on the turbocharger side of things, a 76 millimeter single turbo is normally enough CFM to produce 1,000 horsepower. Twins, you can do two smaller chargers that you can equal enough CFM to get you in that range. We'd always suggest that you talk to a company like Turbonetics or Precision Turbos to make sure that they will size the chargers per your application. So you can tell them what size the engine is, maybe give them a little bit of specs from us, and they'll recommend a turbocharger that will be appropriately sized to work with your vehicle, with your application, and what your power levels are. And then also, if you could do an air-to-water intercooler with those, which both those companies will sell kits for that, that's going to be huge to keep manifold air temps down and allow you to reliably make this type of power. So again, call those turbo companies, they'll be able to recommend something that'll work great for you. All right, so long and short of it, there are many different ways to build a reliable 1,000 horsepower LS engine, but this lineup here that we've showed you is what we use year in and year out to build these engines reliably and not have problems. So you guys that are doing this at home, if you follow this blueprint, I guarantee you this lineup of parts will not let you down. For you guys that maybe need a little bit of help, we do offer boosted short blocks. We do sell this boosted head as a fully assembled cylinder head. For you guys that are just looking to have the whole package done, we can build you a full turnkey engine with the charger, dyno tested, with video, just ready to drop in your car. If you do have questions, feel free to reach out, call us, email us, and stay tuned because we're going to be doing a bunch of informational LS videos on both NA and boosted here in the near future.